Hey there everybody again, Wayne Defrancesco here, and as you can see on your video screen you've got Nick Watney. Just won a nice tournament, has been playing some great golf this year, and it's always fun to look at these swings and see if we can tell why. Well, obviously Watney's got some advantage. He's tall, lean, strong, young. He's the pretty much the prototype new player these days. If anybody saw the Nationwide this week, he had two amateurs, actually college kids, I wouldn't even call them amateurs hardly, who finished 1-2, and they're both Watney lookalikes. These guys are 6'2", 3, lean, strong, and hit the ball massive distances as Watney does. So another thing that's interesting about Watney is you can see from watching him his technique is much more refined and conventional than, say, Bubba Watson. So here we've got a guy who is big and has a great golf swing. Just a different way to go about it. Bubba kind of puts the thing in there and plays by talent. Watney's obviously talented, but he's going to eventually, I think, be the better player. Now, let's take a look at the swing and see what's up. Again, on the left side over here, we've got a driver swing from face on. This swing analysis stuff isn't perfect. I just have to use the swings I can get, and when I get a nice view with a still camera, that's the one I usually use. So I would normally look at one side with a 9-iron and the other side with a driver, but hey, that's what we got. And from any picture you can find some interesting stuff. You'll note right away the fairly strong grip with quite a bit of inward wrist bend there. And when we take a look at Watney's position at the top of his swing, you'll see how he uses that and gets a lot of wrist cock, but keeps the face pretty square to open by cupping that wrist, and pretty much is going to maintain that bend the whole way back, which is kind of an easy idea in a swing when you just tell someone, keep your wrist bent the same amount. If we look at it from over here, we'll look at another swing where it'll be a little more clear than that. The wrist is definitely going to be cupped. Now, again, here's a little old school move here. We got some slide in the hips. You can see he's probably come off the box line about, I don't know, 2 to 3 inches, and a little slide into the right even. But the interesting thing, normally you would see, of course I see this when I teach, I see it all the time, but normally you would see footwork with evidence of a lot of rollover in the right. Maybe the heel would pick up on the left, you'd see a lot of rolling around, and then on the forward swing you might see the left toes jam into the ground. So watch the foot movement here, there isn't any. So it's very rare that you'll see a movement that much to the right loading in the backswing and not see any give in that right foot or any movement there. So he is using his trunk tremendously and keeping his lower body stable, so you know that he is really strong, because you don't really see quiet feet like that. Perfect knee movement. If I was going to show someone a prototype of quiet yet active athletic leg movement, I would show them this one right here. So you'll see the head is at least halfway out of the box up there. So once again, this keep the head and dead still in the backswing, or keep the weight left. That's just a preference. That's an idea. Plenty of guys don't do that, and here's one of them. Now what he does do is He lowers just a little bit in the backswing, and then a pretty significant lowering in the forward swing. But notice how the lateral movement will drive his head right back into the box and down. Now, this is normal on the strike, especially with the driver. You'll see a little retraction of the head backwards, but only a little here. Another thing that's interesting about this shot is that you can tell that he's catching that ball with his hands forward a bit. So it's a pretty good bet that he's going to be using a driver with a little bit more loft, or at least at this point in time when this swing was taken, you know, he's using something in the 10-5 range, because otherwise he'd be hitting it pretty low. So another thing that I like to look at is the ability to drive the right side forward into the ball. So you know his chest is really opening. Look at the hips. What you don't see here that you'll see in some guys is lateral hip movement beyond the starting point. You don't see that much because he's so open at impact. I mean, he might be, when he hits that ball, he might be 70 degrees open. He's really facing the target. And just a complete unwind into the ball. So he can bomb it. I know a guy who was a standard bearer in one of the tournaments recently. He said Watney hit it so far it was like ridiculous. Now, this was a shot he hit at TPC in the Players, and I'm going to use it because it's one of the few shots, or the only shot that I found with a still camera that was actually situated on a decent angle. So here we can kind of see some of the down the line swing mechanics that we go over. The first move of the club, and I'll show you a little comparison of two swings from down the line, and I'll show you how he's really improved his swing over the last 3 years. But here we see that the hands start on the plane line, the club comes up, and then the hands will shift above it a little bit. That's because the right arm doesn't bend very fast, and the left arm will rotate out away a little bit. So he's got the Harmon look here at halfway up, which is a little more in front of the chest. Got a nice deep move with the right thigh and hip. On this particular swing, the knees squat just in front of the box, but you can see how much he's lowered. I mean, that's a lot. And as he hits it, if you look at the amount that he's going to raise up into impact, well, here's another swing that Brandel Chambly wouldn't like because he's lowering and then snapping up. Oh wait, Brandel said this was a great golf swing. Anyway, so a la Harmon, you've got most of the progression upward in the first half of the backswing, not that much more in the second. Normally when there's two reasons why he's not going to really approach right on the shaft plane. One is when I draw this line, it's under his belt buckle, which is really up there, more like 60. And the other is when you get tall guys that have a lot of bend, or their forearm gets angled more in that direction. It's not normal for them to get it all the way back down to the shaft plane. Although if he had set up hands a little higher, he'd be pretty close to it right there. So as he hits the ball, you can see his hips are firmly, right in the box. He's open. You can see the right arm extend through. Great follow through there. All right, so let's take a look at a couple other swings here. So here's one, and I'm going to compare it to a swing from 2008 that Carl Welty put on YouTube, so thanks to him. So let's take a look at this, and what we're going to see is we're going to see a nice change in the technique here. We call this maybe Watney's old swing or whatever, but the club is definitely getting more behind him and thus is more crossed at the top. Now watch the difference here. It's pretty significant. So my guess is that what he's worked on over time is making sure the club head is more up on the hands and then not crossing the line as much. So look at the difference. This is a big difference. This swing on the left here is more Davis Lovish, and the one on the right, that club is planed much, much better there. Now in both cases, and this is why he was good anyway, I'm going to draw a line from that grip end down to the shaft line, shaft plane line. Watch where the hands go. There you go. This is something I've been talking about recently quite a bit, and it's the effective sidearm throwing motion that has the hands moving out toward the ball, the shaft flattening, the right elbow moving parallel to the grip, and the forearm tipping to more vertical, and at the same time the lower body is really mirroring or actually initiating that motion by driving left and around, and then the upper body mirrors that by coming forward and around. And what you get is a look of pure rotation, but with the lateral movement of the pivot combined in there, along with the deepening of the hips, which is facilitated by the lowering of the head. So just take a look at that hand motion in the shaft. So here he is this year, and you'll see, well, hell, it's like the same thing, except when the shaft isn't crossed as much, he doesn't have as much unraveling to do. So in other words, if the shaft were over here, it would take him longer to shallow it. And here's the key to having the club on plane at the top, or at least more left, is that once the shaft shallows early, you can spend more time steepening it. And when the shaft is steepening or working, say this way, more toward the ball, as opposed to flattening out here, the club is going to come above the right forearm here instead of below it, like the swing in '08. So watch where this club comes down. So this is pretty classic stuck, and this would require, here's the club right here, this would require much, much more hand action to square the face. So there it is. It's close, but it's better now. You can see it. It was just, here's that shaft, but by the time it got to one more frame, look where that shaft is. So that's coming in from under, and this one's coming in from a much better spot here. So that's a pretty significant change, and I would say that, you know, I'm sure he's worked on that pretty hard, and has done a real nice job making that better. So again, we've got, oh, here's one from '09, and you'll see this is different too. A little better than that other one, but not quite as good as this one. So you may not see it, but I do. Anyway, but the cool thing is, and I'm just picking the guys that are really playing good and are great players. But when you keep seeing the same stuff, like for example, and I think this is super important to understand, that the last thing you want to do is drop those hands backwards, coming forward. Open up, stay deep, squeeze the arms, and just rip it. All right, that's Nick Watney.